the Pharisees, those who worshipped with their lips and not with their hearts, in the time of Yahusha. And don't get me wrong, those very same wise men, so-called wise men, holy men, false prophets, they're all around us today. But in the time of Yahusha, these Pharisees, these hypocrites and liars, they constantly tested Yahusha, not to confirm that he was Hamashiach, the Messiah, not because, as you would have thought, for a people who had prophesied the coming of Hamashiach and the Messiah, the people who knew that their salvation was in Hamashiach. You would have thought that they would seek to reveal him as Yahusha, the Redeemer, the Savior, the Deliverer. But no, that's not what they did. They were constantly testing him to ensnare him because they thought they were so smart, so brilliant. They knew it all. They walked around, they even fooled themselves, most likely. Many of them fooled themselves into thinking that not only were they greater than the people that they lorded over, not only were they better than, more pious, holier than, from their customs to the way they dressed, separating themselves from the people, wanting the esteem and the glory and the accolades of the people. But many of them likely fooled themselves into believing that they were better than, greater than, smarter than, more pious than, even though in their hearts they knew they worshipped only with their lips and not with their souls. They were people of rules, regulations, and traditions. The rules, regulations, traditions of Moshe, of Moses, and they abandoned the only law that mattered, the law of the Supreme Elohim, the law of the Most High, the law of Yahuwah. But they went out of their way. They went out of their way to, with their brilliantly devised queries and interrogations, they sought to ensnare, entrap, and trip up Yahusha, the Son of the Most High, the Hamashiach. That was their intention, their evil intention, to trip Yahusha up and to attempt to discredit him in front of the people because they thought with their riddles and their puzzles that they could trip him up. They knew he was Hamashiach, but they because their hearts were so hard, because their souls were calloused, they didn't understand the depth of their depravity in their power grab, in their grasp on dominion over their fellow man, such that they should just absolutely humble themselves before Yahusha and understand they had no power in the eyes of Elohim and Hamashiach. Yahuwah manifested in the flesh. And at one point they come to him with one of their riddles or puzzles or one of their tests, one of their questions, one of their trick questions, just to try him, to see how he would answer. Again, to discredit him, not to reveal him as Hamashiach. And they ask Yahusha, they ask, can a man be separated from his wife? Can a man have his wife, can a man put away his wife? Can a man put away his wife? And Yahusha says to them, what did Moshe command you? What did Moses command you? And they said, Moses said that we could have a certificate of divorce and put away our wives. And Yahusha tells them that Moses, gave you this commandment because of the hardness of your heart. Moses granted you a concession because of the callous nature of your soul. Moshe acquiesced to your weakness of the flesh and conceded this to you. But Elohim, the Most High, Yahuwah, the Most High who breathes life, the Most High who brings into existence, the Most High who creates, the meaning of the name, YHWH, the Tetragrammaton, Yahuwah, that's how it's pronounced, Yahuwah. From the beginning of time, from the beginning of creation, said that a man will join with a woman and become one flesh. They will be cleaved together as one flesh. Yahusha tells them that they will become as one. This is from Yahuwah, that they will become as one. And he says to these hypocritical Pharisees and lying scribes, he tells them, and he says, what Yahuwah has joined, let no man separate. Think about that. Think about that, because that's what we do as humans. That's what we do. We try to, at every turn, we try to justify all manner of impropriety, all manner of evil, all manner of sin. Our minds are justification machines. And the untempered mind, the man who, like all of us, and I've been no different, the man unbound who runs amok across this world and leads a life of the flesh, will seek to justify and make righteous every single infraction, every single corruption that he can. We're diligent about it too. We're so diligent about justifying the hardness of our heart, about making righteous the whole, the depths of the chasm in our soul. We seek to make lawful the weaknesses of our flesh. And we'll justify everything from lying to cheating to stealing to murder. There is nothing so depraved, so decadent, so defiling, and so debased that we will not seek to justify to ourselves why it is we've done it, or why it is we're gonna do it. In an attempt to navigate this world, in an attempt to go along to get along, in an attempt to have some measure of solace as we wreak havoc across this planet. And what has that done for us? What is all of our justifications? What is all of our self-righteousness, our self-importance, our know-it-allness? What has it gotten us? No matter how righteous, no matter what rules we put into place to guide ourselves, no matter what laws, no matter what traditions, what has it gotten us? We're still hopeless. We're still depressed. We're still anxious. We're still frustrated. We're still longing. We're still thirsting. We're still climbing mountains every single day in search of something we can't grasp, we can't figure out, we can't know. We're constantly questioning. We're never satisfied. We're never gratified. We're never thankful. It's never enough. We're always clawing. We're always scratching. We're always cannibalizing. We're always conquering. Because no matter what it is that we seek to undertake, and no matter what it is we look to justify, we cannot heal the hole in our heart. We cannot find peace. We cannot find solace. And what are all the laws and rules and regulations and traditions of man? What do they yield? What do they reveal? Think about this. All of the rules, regulations, traditions, guidelines, and laws that we've concocted, which are merely justifications for all of our impropriety, or they are guardrails and restraints from keeping us from thrusting the world into chaos, like it's not in chaos anyway. And then, so all of those laws haven't stopped any of the decadence and depravity of this world. Millions are in prison. Millions break the law, break the rules, break the traditions, break the regulations. But if you think about, well, what are these laws, rules, regulations, traditions? What are these traditions actually telling us, revealing to us, showing us? They reveal nothing. So most laws are written to forbid us from doing something. And many of those laws are good laws. Again, they're keeping a lot of us from going absolutely bonkers, from going wild, from running amok. There'd certainly be a lot more chaos and violence and unethical undertakings if there weren't rules and regulations and traditions and laws of man. Don't get me wrong. But it's not solving anything. It's not solving the singular issue at the root of all decadence, depravity, defilement, and debasement, evil and sin of humanity. It's not healing our heart. So most laws are written to forbid us from doing things. A lot of those laws are good. A lot of those laws, if you look into it, are questionable. And a lot of those laws are absolutely insane when you see how illogical and unreal and weird they are. But irrespective, most laws restrain us and forbid us from doing things. And so those laws, what do they reveal? What do they show you? They reveal the evil side of man. The things that man has to be forbidden from doing because he will do them. So these laws are written to restrain him. So they reveal the decadent, debased, depraved nature of mankind. They certainly don't reveal salvation. They don't reveal deliverance. They don't reveal anything good. They're written. Think about this. They're written. They're written for the depraved and the debased. They're written for the unbelievers and the unfaithful. They're written for those who would commit such infractions, such debasement, and they also reveal the punishment for such sin. So these laws reveal nothing but depravity, debasement, evil, sin, and punishment, penance. That's what they reveal. And then there's other laws. So let's then look at the other laws. There's a small subset of laws. So the majority of laws are written to forbid you from doing things. Then there's a small number of laws that are written that allow you to do certain things. And in the case of what Yahusha was describing, a law like divorce, for instance. So these are the laws that allow you to do certain things. There are a much smaller subset of the laws that forbid you from doing things. And what do these laws reveal? These laws are simply justifications. As I said from the outset, we will seek to, as much as we can, codify, to carve into stone, to enshrine into law the reasoning behind what it is we seek to make okay, the things that we seek to justify, the things that we want to do, that we want to carry on with, the infractions, the things that were formerly infractions, or the things that, we'd like to get over on one another. We'll seek to justify them to ourselves, but where they're not so depraved, where they're not so decadent, where they're not so obviously unrighteous, we'll seek to codify them into law. Now, again, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of laws that allow us to do certain things that we should be allowed to do, and that the rules, regulations, and traditions of man have no right to stop us from doing. And so they're righting former wrongs where laws were once written to stop us from doing things, where the authorities attempted to stop us from doing things that we should be able to do. That's our human right to do. The freedoms, the natural law, the freedoms that we're all born with, the rights that we're all born with, that at one point the authorities restricted us from, they should have no right to restrict us from. So in those cases, the laws that allow us, imagine that, you have to write laws to allow us to do things that we're born with. Natural rights. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying divorce is one of those things. All right, I'm just making a point here. So some of those laws that free us to exercise our natural rights are good laws, such that they should be codified. But the fact that we have to codify such things is an absurdity. Nevertheless, such is the nature of human authority, of the human Leviathan-like machine that we create to manage us all. That aside, there are many laws that are written that are simply justifications for small debasements and depravities, small sins and evils that we want to be able to do lawfully as part of the rules, regulations, traditions of man. And therein, again, goes back to what Yahusha was saying. Moses gave you that commandment as a concession to your hard hearts. And so, those laws, the ones that allow you to do certain things that are simply concessions to your hardened hearts, to the justifications that aren't so decadent they could actually codify them into law, what does that reveal? That simply reveals that your heart is hard. That reveals that your soul is empty. That reveals that your flesh is weak. For instance, I'll give you an example. In certain areas, in certain locales, in certain places, prostitution is legal. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it moral. That doesn't make it good. That doesn't make it wholesome. It is a concession to the weakness of our flesh. As divorce is a concession to the hardness of our heart. So when you really look at most laws, they're revealing the worst of us. And then there are those traditions, not laws, traditions that we undertake that have nothing to do with law, that also reveal the same things about ourselves. And then there are the things we seek to justify in our own mind, whether or not we're breaking actual laws, rules, regulations, or traditions or not. The things that our conscience is telling us is wrong, yet we do them anyway, and we justify those things. Because as I said from the very beginning, we seek to justify all manner of evil and sin and infraction as we make a way around this world, as we seek to navigate this illusion, this mirage, this hallucination. Because we're invested in this world. We're invested in the flesh. And so we seek to make everything that is of the flesh righteous in the flesh. Because we're living our lives for the flesh. And not for Elohim, not for the Most High, not for Yahuwah, which is how we should be living. Because as Yahusha said, what Yahuwah has joined, let no man separate. And think about that. What Yahuwah has commanded, let no man dissolve. Let no man break. Let no man render asunder. Why? Because he gave us the keys on how to live our life in a manner that pleases him most, and in a manner that reveals the thing that none of the rules, regulations, and traditions and laws of man can reveal. Peace, solace, healing, love, and everlasting life. The things we all want, but we can't have because we are deluded and distracted and deceived into living a life of the flesh and for the flesh, and living a life of this earth, not of the kingdom to come, not of Elohim. And so again, all of our justifications, all of our rules, regulations, and traditions, the things they reveal about us are the worst of us. And none of these laws, although they tell us what we shouldn't do, and although they tell us what we're allowed to do, none of them tell us what we should do. And therein lies the beauty and the glory and the loving nature of Yahuwah, Yahusha. Yahuwah manifested in the flesh as Yahusha, Hamashiach, the Messiah, the Most High, the meaning of the name, Yahusha, the Most High who saves, the Most High who redeems, the Most High who delivers, who delivered us the only law that matters, the only rule that matters, the only command that matters, from which all other commands make sense, from which all other good things spring, from which all other understanding and comprehension of what Elohim expects of us and what pleases Elohim comes from, blossoms from, springs from. This is the wellspring, this one commandment, which is a commandment of what we should do. Think of that. All of man's rules, regulations, traditions, and laws either tell us what we shouldn't do or what we're allowed to do. But only the single supreme command from Yahushua HaMashiach tells us what we should do. To love Yahuwah with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our fellow man as we love ourselves. And from that, we live our lives righteous. Our heart is revealed as true and loving, and our heart is healed. The hole in our our soul, the chasm that tears us apart, the wound within us that we fill with everything from drugs and alcohol to pornography, all manner of evil, sin, decadence, depravity, defilement, debasement. All of it that never fills it. It's an empty hole that you pour everything down until you receive the word, until you receive salvation by simply asking, nothing more than that. Simply asking, knocking on his door, instantly answered, seeking you find. And from that one command, you know what you should do. And that's the only rule, regulation, tradition, or law that matters. Because from that, all the good things spring. All the fruits of Elohim for humanity spring from that one command to love Yahuwah, Yahuwah, with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Because in loving Yahuwah, we have all faith in Yahuwah. So we wear the armor of Yahuwah, such we become impervious to the slings, arrows, spears, and daggers of the evil ones of this world. In loving Yahuwah with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, we naturally follow his commandments because we love him. We don't follow it begrudgingly because these rules, regulations, laws, and traditions reveal punishment and penance. So we follow it begrudgingly because we have to, not because we want to. But the one commandment, to love Yahuwah with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we could do so because we have come to Yahusha and asked for our salvation, and he's granted it instantly, flooding us with the breath of Yahuwah, the breath of life, the set-apart spirit, the Ruach now resides within this temple. The creation of Yahuwah resides within us, guides us, energizes us, heals us, motivates us, encourages us, fills us with, animates us with the Spirit, the set-apart Spirit, such that we're more alive than we've ever been. We're finally alive. We're recreated, revised, reconstrued, reconstructed, and reborn in his image once again. And so we're beaming with his energy. And so now we follow all of his commandments because we want to, because we know it's righteous, because we're compelled to, because because we're honored to, because we're privileged to, we love to. What a difference that is. And we love our fellow man as we love ourselves. And we love ourselves because we need to love our fellow man. And so we live as an example, not to admonish our fellow man, not to beat them down, not to punish them into righteousness, not to hurl fire and brimstone at them, but to just live as an example for them in all righteousness. So to treat ourselves right, to eat the right foods, to train the right way, to keep the temple healthy, to honor Elohim, to revere Yahuwah in all ways, to feed our minds productive, wholesome knowledge so we can come up with inventions and ideas and concepts that help our fellow man, to feed our souls and our spirits and our hearts with spiritual nutrition, with the word, the way, the truth, and the life, the parables, the phrases, the teachings of Yahusha, to nourish our bodies with the food of Yahuwah, not the man-made, scientist-constructed sludge that they call food that has been created simply to fool another illusion. Just like this whole life is an illusion, the food is an illusion. It has been created and devised with decadence and depravity and all manner of chemicals and toxins simply to fool our sense of smell, our sight, and our taste buds, and only serve to poison us and destroy us like all of the ways of the flesh and the ways of the world do. But in seeking to keep ourselves strong so that we could be here and be strong for our people, to love ourselves as we love our fellow man, so that we are disciplined, we show self-control, we show meekness, which means not weakness, but to restrain our passions, restrain our anger, restrain our rage, restrain our hatred, to fill ourselves with Elohim's love, to fill ourselves with Elohim's joy, to fill ourselves with Elohim's peace that we receive when we are washed over with the Ruach and the Spirit. Doesn't mean we won't make mistakes, we're all imperfect. So we'll still have all the evil nature of man still dwells within our hearts. None of us are made perfect. We're only perfect once again as we walk this path, this narrow path that leads to the narrow gates of the kingdom to come, where Yahusha will live among us once again, where Yahuwah will manifest as Yahusha, and in being guided by the Ruach and our salvation, as we head on this narrow path of kingdom to come, where he walks amongst us, when he lives amongst us once again, and we can love him with all of our hearts, souls, minds, and strength, and where we have everlasting, where there's no more hatred or sadness or evil or sin or decadence or depravity, defilement or debasement, no more war or misery, pain or suffering, illness or disease, murder or death, no more demons, no more Hashatan, no more Satan, no more Lucifer, no more haters, detractors, psychic vampires, negative influencers, no more corruptors, evildoers, misleaders, or deceivers. He's crushed them all beneath his feet. He's wiped it all away. And there is nothing but everlasting peace, everlasting joy, everlasting happiness, everlasting love, everlasting healing. There's everlasting life, the living law written on our heart, the word, that single commandment. We're finally able to live in a true sense as we were when we were in Eden, perfect, made in his image, made in the image of Yahuwah, perfection, everything, until we were led astray for the first time by the serpent, by the dragon, cast out. And now there's a way back home to Yahuwah, to the Father, to Abba, to follow this narrow path. And how do we see the narrow path? We're filled with his love and his light. And the Ruach guides us. We could see it clearly. It's filled with the light of Yahuwah, Yahusha, which wipes away all darkness, because the darkness cannot comprehend it, the darkness cannot fathom it, the darkness cannot overcome it, for he is the light of this world. And when his light shines, it shines on us. The Ruach brings the light within us, bursts forth like an infinite number of rays, healing us from the inside and serving as a beacon for all others as we help as we simply live as an example for our fellow men. That light, they see it in us, beaming forth from us, absolutely encouraged, inspired, motivated, just filled with his healing energy, and others could see it. Those who are lost, that need salvation, could see that we are living as an example. They could see that we're full of healing and love and energy and joy, his righteous joy, his righteous love, his righteous energy. And they know that if we who were once like they, hopeless, frustrated, anxious, sorrowful, hateful, decadent, depraved, defiled, debased, filled with addictions to alcohol, to drugs, to pornography, cheap thrills, cheap high, cheap titillations, always longing, always thirsting, always clawing, scratching, cannibalizing. They know that if we can now be at peace and full of joy and be saved, then they too can be saved by Yahusha HaMashiach. And that same light beams down on that narrow path that we now walk, and that we stay true to, that we walk on, and that we're guided by, in the right direction by the Ruach, the set-apart spirit, the breath of Yahuwah, to walk this emblazoned, illuminated path that is so obvious now. And it leads to that brilliant light. And I could see it, that is right there, beaming through the narrow gates of the kingdom to come, where he will reign supreme once and forever. And we will have everlasting life. And we will then be made perfect and be able to love him with all our hearts, souls, minds, and strength in a manner that pleases him most. But in living this life and understanding that there is one law, one rule, one command which tells us what we should do. Again, to love Yahuwah with all our hearts, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our fellow man as we love ourselves. And in being able to take care of ourselves so we could take care of our fellow man. And in taking care of our fellow man, we're taking care of ourselves. And again, we're taking care of them in a way by, again, feeding ourselves the right nutrition, right? We have to love ourselves to love our fellow man, as I just went over. But we're feeding our mind the right nutrition, feeding our soul the right nutrition, feeding our bodies the right nutrition, and living as an example so that we can be there for our fellow man who needs help, who needs salvation, who needs encouragement, who needs inspiration, who needs motivation, who needs a helping hand. Not that we admonish them, not that we punish them, not that we wreck them, not that we hurl fire and brimstone at them, not that we preach to them all manner of why they're unrighteous, why they're wrong, why they're lost, why they're unhappy. Not that we beat them down with such things, because it is the nature of man to rebel. That's why laws are broken, because the rules, regulations, traditions of man, it's These infractions are made all the time because by nature we're rebellious. And the same for the law that's written in stone. The old laws, rules, regulations, traditions of man are written in stone and they perish and they actually foment rebellion. Why? Because they reveal evil, they reveal sin, they reveal decadence, they reveal punishment, and man is naturally rebellious. Just like the father of lies, Hashatan, who lords over this illusion. And since we were cast out and forced to wander this earth, not having the earth any longer, especially after Cain crushed Abel's skull, forced all the generations of Cain and thereafter forced to, because the land would no longer yield its fruit, forced to roam this land and bend this land to their will, such that if they could no longer have the fruits of this earth, if the earth could no longer yield its fruits, then they would bind man to them. They would conquer man. That they would bend this world to their will in such a way that the flesh would now yield its fruits instead of the land, the good land of Elohim, of Yahuwah, this earth that he created. If it would no longer yield its fruits to us, then man and Cain, and even after all of Cain and his generations were destroyed, his seed still lived on, his ideas still lived on, the decadence and depravity still lived on and infected us all, such that we all continue to live a life of the flesh in seeking the fruits of the flesh instead of the fruits of Elohim. But the difference is that now there is a way back to Elohim, a way back to Yahuwah, a way back to receiving the good fruits of the good tree. The trees we should be planting. The trees of love, the trees of joy, the trees of healing, the trees of salvation that yield the fruit of Yahuwah, Yahusha, and that deliver the nutrition of everlasting life, such is the living law, not the law that perishes on the stone, but the living law that's written on our heart, that we no longer follow begrudgingly, that we don't rebel against because we've received our salvation and we finally have what we've always been searching for in our rebellion. We've always been searching for the same thing: healing, love, joy, peace, and life, true life. Not the walking dead, the waking dead, the zombified life of this illusion, but the real life, the real, the zeros and ones behind this mirage that Hashatan runs and programs. No, the real, the life, the everlasting life of the kingdom to come, as it was in Eden, so will it be in the kingdom to come. And so the one law that tells us what we should do reveals the salvation, the redemption, the way, the truth, and the life that we should be living and that we want to live. Not because we have to, not because we're punished if we don't, but because we want to, because we know it's righteous and true, because we've been granted salvation, because it's our honor and our privilege. And because we know when we are right with Yahuwah, Yahusha, all is right in our world. And so let us walk righteous and true, following the only command that matters, the only command that tells us what we should do and that reveals all that should be, that reveals what is the best of us, not the worst of us, that reveals all that we have ever hoped for and looked for. Let us march steadfast and true, relentless and ceaseless, uncompromised, unconquerable, unassailable, undefeatable, unstoppable, as we move like a juggernaut to kingdom come.